welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Stevie Ray, hello mate, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
We're
Very
all
good.
good, mate. We're all good. All the better for having you join us today. Stevie, we're going to jump straight in, and I'm always interested to know sort of where the story started and growing up in Glasgow. If we believe what we see in the films, the streets can be tough there. But growing up, did you feel like you had to be able to sort of look after yourself, and if so, was you comfortable with conflict? And ultimately, I'm going to sort of lead this into how you ended up finding yourself involved in mixed martial arts. But sort of just tell me a little bit about growing up and what it was like.
Yeah, so I'm not actually from Glasgow. I'm from a place called Fife. It's closer to Edinburgh. So yeah, I've lived in Kirkcaldy, Fife, pretty much all my life. My family's not, I've not got money in my family or anything, so we're brought up in council estate kind of house. Yeah, I mean, growing up, pretty much had to learn how to fight a little bit because, a little bit rough some of the areas where I've lived, and yeah, I got bullied for a little bit when I was younger. Probably because I was just so cheeky. I probably deserved it a lot, but I'd always be cheeky to the older kids and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I ended up having to have a lot of fights. Whether it was defending myself or just getting into fights, even before I started MMA. So fighting's been a part of my life since probably like the age of like 10, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when did it get to the point where, you're scrapping in the street to thinking, well, hang on a minute, was someone like, look, mate, you could do something really decent with what what you've got there. You need to get yourself in a gym. Like, how did that kind of part of the journey start?
So it's quite funny because the guy I had my first ever fight with, like proper fight, it was in my front garden. I was maybe around 10. I must have been 10 years old. Proper square go, if you like, how we call it. An arranged kind of fight. He was my friend, but we had disagreements and we decided to fight. Yeah, it was then him years later that ended up saying, at the time he was calling it cage fighting. He was saying, I've been doing this cage fighting stuff. You should come along. You'd be really good at it. Because, yeah, like at that time, before I started MMA, I was getting into fights in the street, probably going down the wrong path, hanging around. I was just at that age, like I was 18. I was 19 when I started MMA, but from the age of 16 to 19, it was getting to the weekend. It was just a case of, it was living for the weekend, doing whatever it was through the week, and drinking at the weekend and then getting into fights. A lot of the time, it was because my friends had maybe started something and I was kind of known as the one that would fight, so I'd end up being the one that's involved in the fight.
It's like it sounds like almost like one of those like action movies from the 80s. Is like my nemesis when I was 10, but then later in life he guided me down the path to be a true fighter. That's what it sounds like to me. It should be like with like synth music in the background, like one of those like 80s action films. That's what I think your life might be, Stevie.
I remember the first time I ever went to training because I'd bumped into this guy, Dean Crichton, his name is. So I'd bumped into him for the second time. Well, I bumped into him every now and again, but I remember the first time he was telling me to come along, try the MMA or the cage fighting. He explained it to me, and I was like, yeah, maybe. I didn't really watch it or anything. I wasn't really ever into watching boxing or fighting, although I was fighting and getting myself into fights. I never really watched it, but yeah, it wasn't until the second time he asked me to go along. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything tonight. I'll come along. I'll pick you up. Yeah, and I remember it was in the place I first started training. It was in the guy's back garden, so it was like it was a private club. He had like a big hut slash log cabin in the back garden. You maybe fitted 10 people max, and that'd be pretty crowded. And
It's already
yeah,
sounding very Cobra Kai, by the way. I'm loving
yeah,
this. Even more, it
yeah,
really plays into the action story. Keep going.
yeah. It was like it was a private club. We went along. There was Dean, another guy. I think his name is Ian, and myself. And Dean was like said to my coach at the time, Jim McKelvey, under Edge MMA. He was saying, "Oh, Jim, I've brought this guy down, introduced me." And Jim was actually a bit annoyed that Dean had brought me along without asking, because it was like a private club. It wasn't a public club, and it was in his back garden. And yeah, like I was just fortunate that the class wasn't busy that night. That because he actually told me I couldn't train, and he said come back. This must have been around July or August 2009, and he actually said to me like come back in like October or something like that. Come back when we're taking more people on. And then the class ended up being quiet, and he was like, you know what, you can join in. Right, day one, I was sparring. Yeah, like I was doing a bit of boxing sparring, MMA sparring. I was rolling. I was in a triangle, and I was just fascinated. I just couldn't believe that. Like, I just because like I said, I was kind of like I was going to the gym. I was lifting weights. I was known for being a kind of tough guy in the area. Because I had to get into fights and stuff. I was fighting at school a lot. And I just couldn't believe that like this guy half the weight of me was like choking me, and able to control me almost like he was stronger than me, but he was like lifting weights. I'd be able to lift way more weights than him, but he was throwing me around and choking me and putting me in arm bars, and that was it. After that I was hooked. I ended up spewing in the guy's back garden. uh, I ate too late. I ate like pasta 10 minutes before training. Trying to scuff it done. And yeah, I spewed in the guy's plant pots. And then I joined back in. I was like, I'm good now. Like he told me just to sit the rest out. I was like, no, I'm good. I can go again. And I think he just liked what he seen, because originally when he said I could join in, he said you can join in today, and if you like it, you can come back in like October when we're taking people. But by the end of the session, I think he had liked like that I put a lot of hard work in. He said you can come back tomorrow. So it almost was like when you're watching Karate Kid
Yeah.
or what is it, Never Back Down, that movie Never Back Down. But yeah, and then that was it. That's how I started training. Started training every day. And yeah, when I first started training, I was actually on a electronic tag. Um, like one of the ankle tags that because I'd been getting into trouble for fighting in the street. And yeah, that literally, since that first day, changed my kind of personality and just me as a person.
Did the tag make it easier or harder for someone to get you in like a heel hook or something? Is that extra leverage?
Yeah, that's it. I had to actually. I had been training for maybe 4 or 5 months, and I wanted so I got my first fight lined up in December 2009, and we were trying to figure out if I could fight with this tag on. And yeah, like I'm like, do I wear wrestling boots and just no kick? Because back then there was like, I'm sure I had seen somebody wearing wrestling boots before, and they just weren't allowed to kick. But yeah, and then I had to apply to the court to get my tag off to then compete. And when we went to court, me and my lawyer had said, because he wasn't very positive, thinking I was going to get off. I told him it was for back then when we were calling it cage fighting. Yeah, like, can I get my tag off so I can go and fight in a cage? And we decided to go down and say it was karate. And luckily we did. The judge that eventually let me, that decided to let me get the tag off, he had done karate back in the day, he said.
Nice.
Yeah, he started with that. Yeah, I know how much discipline it can teach you, and and I done karate back in the day, and I was like, yes, I'm in with one here.
I can't believe you were contemplating having a fight with a tag on. That sounds absolutely mental. But it's a great thing that the judge realised it, because it's true, isn't it? Like, that's why a lot of us, like, I don't know, you've got kids, haven't you, Stevie? And like, yeah, you got in the background behind you there. And do you put them into or martial arts, or will you when they're older? Because my daughter does a little bit of jiu-jitsu now and stuff, and I think it's a great thing for kids to learn a martial art for that kind of like discipline and respect and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, MMA changed my, not that I was ever a thug or a bad person, but I was just, fully nonsense, like fighting, never thinking about the consequences. And I was an active person. I did like to wrestle and fight a bit, and just kind of be a typical lad. But yeah, like it totally changed me. Like if I didn't start MMA, I maybe would have really went down the wrong path. I feel like it's changed me as a person in so many beneficial ways. So yeah, like I'd like my kids to train. I don't know if I'd like them to compete, just because just because I know the maybe some of the negatives, like getting hit in the head every week or a lot. It's not really good for your brain, but there is a lot of positives, like discipline and just your physical health, your mental health. Yeah, especially the mental health. I feel like a lot of people that do jiu-jitsu or MMA, like they use it as a coping mechanism for dealing with anxiety or depression, or just having something to do in their life. Yeah.
I totally agree, Stevie. I mean, like, I'm an old man, but I still try and have a little move about, and I find that 15 minutes of sparring, or even like half hour on the pads, I don't think about anything else. And I think that's so important, that any worries or anxieties you've got, I find that when you're in a gym, and if you're sparring or even just in pads, I feel that like it's pure escapism. It's like you can only concentrate what's in front of you at that point, and that's a lovely way to kind of just dial out of day-to-day problems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I feel like exercise in general is really good for mental health. Like, don't get me wrong, like running on a treadmill and just going for it, like having a pushing yourself to a limit sometimes. But what I find so fascinating and better about jiu-jitsu, and or Muay Thai or striking, MMA, whatever, I feel like it's a lot more beneficial for mental health than like going to your typical gym, because you have to concentrate so much. Like you can go to the gym and run on the treadmill and still be thinking about all the depressing shit going on in life, and a lot of it's just caused by overthinking. So you can still tend to think about that on a treadmill, or if you're doing basic stuff like lifting weights. Whereas if you go to a jiu-jitsu class and you're having to learn to put your arm here, and then put your head here, and then put your foot here, like it's so hard to think about anything else in life other than what you're being taught. And don't get me wrong, there is some days where you're daydreaming a bit, you're thinking about what you're having for your tea later, rather than concentrating on the technique. But yeah, that's what I think with jiu-jitsu and MMA. It's so much more. You have to focus, and it's enjoyable more as well, for me anyway.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your career, Steve, because you're not bad at all this fighting stuff, are you? You're all right at all this stuff. You were a Cage Warriors world champion at one point, and one thing I wanted to ask you was, in terms of like you talk about the mental side of things and all that, in terms of nerves or anxiety and stuff, what is more nerve-wracking, fighting for a Cage Warriors world title, or doing a debut in the UFC?
To be honest, they were both. My UFC debut was surprisingly not that nerve-wracking. I think.
Is that because it was on short notice? Because you took it on about 15 days notice, didn't you? Did it just give you no time to think about it, and that's why it wasn't so nerve-wracking?
So I think it's a couple of things. Like, one, when I fought in my UFC debut, I thought it would be so much different to Cage Warriors, but because Cage Warriors had the the TV cameras, the lights, the crowd. When I came out to my UFC debut, it felt the same. It just literally felt like I was fighting on Cage Warriors. It didn't feel any different. So that was one. I'm like, oh wait a minute, it's not any different. But two, in the lead up, when normally like when a lot of the anxiety and nerves would probably come in the lead up to the fight, like you said, I had 33 pounds to lose. And
Fucking hell.
33 pounds I had, and I only had 15 days. 15 days notice. It was the day after my birthday. I had just ate pizza and birthday cake, and I was just kind of enjoying myself. I'd been in Newcastle the week before I got the call, cornering my teammates, and I ended up absolutely hammered. Just because I never had any fights coming up. I was just, but yeah, I got the call to make my UFC debut. The guy, I'm not sure who the guy was again, but he got injured, and basically my manager said, you've had an opportunity to fight in 2 weeks' time in Poland at lightweight, because we had actually been discussing earlier that day if I could make welterweight, the weight above, and I was like, I don't know, I'm about 85 kilos. Cage Warriors were down the pan at that point. Like, we weren't sure what it was when, like, they weren't sure what was happening, if it was ever gonna, if it was like just ending. I was the Cage Warriors champion, and I just moved back home. My third child was due to be born April 15th. I had just got a full-time job as a fitness instructor, or a kind of boot camp trainer, and it almost looked like I was going to maybe just stop training less and start focusing on my career and providing for the kids and whatever. And then and then this just opportunity came aboard. But yeah, back to the kind of nerve part. Like, I think I was so focused on trying to make weight that I forgot about the fight, because when my manager gave me the opportunity, I was like, no, I can't make lightweight in 2 weeks. There's no chance. And I said, what is it? What's the opportunity? And he told me UFC Poland. It's a 4-fight contract. And I was like, right. I said, well, what about if I just take the fight, I miss weight, do I still have a contract after that? And they were like, well, yeah, I'd imagine so. So that was the plan. We took the fight thinking I would miss weight. I would try and make it as close as I could. I'd then have a contract, and hopefully they would understand it's 2 weeks' notice when I did miss weight. And I absolutely starved myself for 2 weeks. Like, thinking back to what I ate for 2 weeks, and how I managed to train twice a day. But yeah, I eventually made the weight.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that was that.
Tell me a little bit about the mental side of things, and you spoke about not having time to be nervous before that fight, but we're always interested to ask fighters about those moments before walking into the the venue. I mean, I was at UFC Scotland, and I've never heard a crowd respond. Hearing that crowd singing Stevie fucking Ray was unbelievable. It was, I'm literally getting goosebumps thinking about it now. It was absolutely incredible. For instance, being backstage at that show must have been special. But just in general, what is your procedure in the moments before you get the shout, right, we're going, we're walking out? Have you got any kind of thing that you do, a routine, or are you just quite chilled? Like, what's the sort of process that Stevie Ray does before making that walk?
Yeah, so to be honest, I've went through a lot of different kind of things. Obviously, the more experienced I get, I feel like I could deal with it a lot better now. Like, even though I said I wasn't really nervous for my UFC debut, it's like that was maybe the only time I wasn't nervous. I always shit myself before every fight. Like, I'm scared, I'm nervous. That fight, I think, was just, I'm like, you know what? I took it on 2 weeks' notice. Even if I lose, it's like I could say it was 2 weeks' notice. I never had a fight camp, and then I've got an opportunity after it. But yeah, I used to suffer a lot more. Like, I'd be really, really nervous before a fight, to the point that it would like drain me. Because I mean, I'm not scared of getting hit. I'm not scared. Like, it's just scared of losing, scared of letting people down.
Yeah.
And when I was selling, like when I was fighting in Newcastle and London, and I was selling like hundreds of tickets to friends and stuff, and they were coming down, and all the messages, and you're just scared to let everybody down. And but I feel like, I've read a wee bit of books and stuff, and I feel like I'm able to deal with it a lot better now. Like, I know it's normal, even though I always knew it was normal. I could just deal with it better now. Like, it's just it doesn't matter what you kind of do. The nerves are going to come. It's just controlling them at the right time. I read the Fear Bubble, Ant Middleton's book, when I was before I fought Michael Johnson. And so that helped me a lot, even in that fight. And he kind of explains, I don't know if you've read the Fear Bubble, but it just explains like fear. So he explains fear, and he's saying like, he says like there's 4 different types of fear. There's fear of confrontation, there's fear of conflict. I can't remember the other 2, but pretty much just dealing with fear. And he said that, like, so if you start thinking and dwelling on the fight and being really nervous when you're fighting next week, and you're thinking about it all the time, it's going to drain you. By the time you get to the fight, you're going to have used all that energy, and it's going to drain you. So he speaks about being in the fear bubble. It's normal, and being at the right time. So like, what I did before I fought Johnson, I basically said, look, anytime, because it does come up in your head, you go through visions. Even you get bad visions, you visualize it in your head, you get knocked out with a head kick, everybody's so yeah, it's just clearing that out your head. Just saying, you know what, it's no time to fight yet. There's no point in even thinking about it. And then basically, when it's the right time to think about it and get nervous, it's accepting that your body, because your body starts doing this thing like Cowboy Cerrone spoke about before, like he's hitting pads before a fight, and he feels weak, and he's no energy, and it's no working right, and that's just all these nerves. So there's a certain point on the day of the fight where like just everything starts feeling a wee bit different. You start sweating more just sitting doing nothing, and that's your body preparing for, because it knows what's coming. So basically, it's about getting nervous at the right time, not getting nervous too early, almost like reassuring yourself. So I remember when I got to the fight day, I was like, I'm not going to get nervous yet and think about that yet, because I'm co-main event when I fought Michael Johnson. The main card's not even started yet. So I'm going to allow myself to start getting nervous, like. And I can't remember. I chose like a certain fight where I was like, right, now it's time to think about it. Now it's time to get in the zone. There's a reason why I'm feeling nervous. And it's because my body's preparing for battle.
What's the techniques that you're using to stop being nervous? And so when those thoughts are going into your head, say like 5 hours earlier than you want them, what do you do to shut that down?
You just remember yourself, like, why are we going to get nervous now? We've still not even ate our last meal yet, or we've still not even got to the venue yet. So like, why would it's almost like remembering yourself. There's no point in being nervous right now. Like, why are we nervous right now? We're not even at the venue.
I don't feel like I'd have that kind of control. I feel like my brain would be going, why? Like, I know it's a very different thing, because you're doing something that is, technically life threatening, when you going in there and earning your money and doing this kind of job. If I go on stage in front of like a few hundred people, the worst that can happen to me is I fuck up and people think I'm shit at my job. That's kind of the worst thing. It's not like something that could impact me physically or long term or anything like that. But I still will have moments where I'm like, oh, it's press night, the media's all in to review the show or something, and I'm getting nervous. But I kind of feel like my brain would be going, oh, Blake, don't worry, you've got like 4 hours before you're on. You haven't even finished the dress rehearsal yet, so don't get nervous yet. But then my belly would go, no, fuck off, brain. We're getting nervous now. We're doing it now. We're releasing the butterflies now. It's all game over. Like, I don't know. It's in my head. There's got to be more to it than just saying to yourself, no.
I think just the experience, like knowing that, you know what, like, so experiencing the whole thing as well, like, because I remember my first fight, just before I explain that, my first fight, I was so fucking scared. There was even thoughts going through my brain, like, maybe I could make something up. Maybe I could say, like, I need to go home for something. Like, all your brain, the chimp in your brain is just trying to find an exit. Like, I didn't realize I would be so nervous. And I'm like, do I even want to do this? Fuck. And then I remember actually literally thinking before I'm fighting, fuck, why did I not stick in at school? Fucking literally before my first fight, I'm like, I should have stuck in more. Like, this is so nervous, like doing this. But yeah, like, I think just experience, because there's been times where I've been so nervous for a fight to the point, like the Scotland fight, for example, when I won by knockout, the first one, the first time they came to Scotland, I was so nervous. Almost probably the most nervous I've been for a fight, because all my fans were there. They're all wanting me to win. They're all cheering my name, and yeah, I was really, and then I went and knocked the guy out in the first round, and so an experience like that, it almost trains your brain to think this is on your head. Like, we were fine the last time. And then even the other side of that is, I've been on the other side of that where I've lost, and I've been beat, or I've even been knocked out, and it's like, it's not the end of the world. So it's I feel like I used to put too much pressure on myself, thinking this is life or death. And to a point, it is a very challenging thing to do, and it is a fight, but it's not anywhere near as scary as going to like battle. Like, these soldiers that are going to battle, they literally might not come back. They might die. They might get shot. So it's almost like saying to yourself, worst case scenario, you're gonna lose. You're gonna wake up again tomorrow. You're gonna go back to your family. You go eat. You go shower. It's no the end of the world. There's a lot more people worse off, and it's just about learning, especially at the amateur stage. And I try and tell that to people as well. When they're fighting amateur, and obviously if somebody's just lost, and even pro, I mean, it doesn't matter really sometimes what somebody says to you after a loss. You're devastated and stuff, but it's true. It's just, you know what, it could be worse. You live to fight another day, and think about the positives, and that's where it comes down to. Again, I'm totally shouting out Anne Bitherlin, because I liked his fear bubble book that much that I read his zero negativity book. That's the last book I've read, and that's honestly changed my mentality in terms of just thinking positive. And no matter what happens in life, there's two ways of thinking about something. You can think of all the negatives and be depressed, or you can think positive and just feel better. And sometimes it's very hard when you're in such a negative mindset or whatever to see any of the positives. I've been there where I'm so negative and people try to tell me the positives, and sometimes it's like you're stuck in this trap.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just thinking of the positives. Like, so I know that's kind of a long answer, but it's
great.
It's worst case scenario. You think of the positives basically. Like, if you go out and you lose, it's rubbish, you lost, but what's the positives? One, you're going to learn, why did you lose? You need to go and work on this, this, and this. The other positives, I'm going home to my kids. I'm obviously when you're professional, you're getting a wage for win or lose usually, so you've earned money. It's just thinking all the positives really rather than the negatives, because like I said, if you think of all the negatives, it can really put you into a depressing state.
One of the things that after the Johnson fight, we want to sort of touch on you leaving the UFC, and I've read different things, and I'd just like to hear from you, because obviously the story has an incredible positive outcome in the end, but at that point, we'd like to sort of know where you was at, because it was all looking pretty decent, and then all of a sudden you wasn't no longer in the UFC. Like, can you explain to Stevie what happened there?
Yeah, so I mean, I had 11 fights in the UFC altogether. I won 7 and lost 4. It's a pretty decent record. I mean, UFC is the Champions League of MMA. It's pretty hard to, stay undefeated. Very rarely has anyone stayed undefeated. There's the exception of Khabib and, a couple of others. But yeah, it's like the top league. I was doing pretty well. 7 wins, 4 losses. Beat some good names, lost by some good names as well. My last win, Michael Johnson, was probably at the time the biggest win in my career. I remember my manager, who's still my manager, Ali Abdelaziz. He came to me. So I had signed a fight to fight Mark Diakese. We were due to fight UFC London. And I was getting bothered with my knee. This has been for years. Jason Ayari fight, Cajun Johnson fight, and even the Michael Johnson fight. Like, I almost pulled out against Johnson. So yeah, it got to the point. I was early in the camp. I seen Mark was training his arse off. Obviously, I seen it online. He's training. I'm sitting at home on my couch, icing my knee for days. And I tried to obviously then ice my knee, go back to training. I would train, it would swell up huge. Back to ice and blah blah blah. So I pulled out for the first time in my career. Pulled out of the fight. Then the whole show got cancelled because of COVID. So I should have just stuck around. I would have got paid. I heard they all got their show money. But no, God. But yeah, then all of a sudden, like, my manager was saying about signing somewhere else, and I wasn't really up for it. I was like, well, no, because after the Johnson fight, I actually signed a new 4-fight contract after that. So I hadn't even fought any of the fights yet. And he was just saying about, like,
why were you being suggested to potentially sign somewhere else if you had a 4-fight deal with the UFC? What was the logic behind that? Was there talk behind the scenes of other organizations wanting you and there's more money?
I was so confused at the time where I didn't really understand what was going on. But basically, the UFC doctor, one of the doctors, I think it was Jeff Davidson, didn't believe that my knee was in any way fit to fight, whether he meant ever fight again or fight in the next. There was no short-term fix for my knee. He basically said my knee is fucked, and that there wouldn't be a short-term fix. The UFC asked me to go and get orthopedic clearance when I was asking for a fight. This is when Fight Island and all that was going on. So I went and got orthopedic clearance. I went and seen an orthopedic. He basically said your knee is in a pretty shit way. It is very damaged, but I don't see why you couldn't fight. Like, basically saying my knees, I could still fight, but I've not got a great knee, basically. And it's just arthritis and cartilage problems. It's not like I've got an ACL tear or anything like that where it's unstable. It's just, painful at the time anyway. So I got the orthopedic clearance, and I didn't know if they were shocked that I got it so quick and gave them it. Because I mean, I'm being like a third wheel a wee bit. Like, I'm only hearing what my manager's saying, and then obviously my manager's hearing what the UFC is saying. I'm not speaking directly to them, but Yeah, Ali was just saying maybe about signing with Bellator, and I'm like, and I was saying like, why sign? Like, I've got a 4-fight contract, and I think he was scared to tell me like the UFC want to get rid of you. That's what I think he was scared to tell me. Like, he wasn't wanting to like just come out with it. Like, the UFC are wanting to get rid of you because the UFC doctor has advised that your knee is fucked. So that was basically the script. I spoke to Shelby later after this whole thing, and he explained to me as well, like, it wasn't them that wanted to get rid of me. It was the UFC doctor that advised my knee isn't in a good position. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened. I mean, so I then, after back and forth, and I was kind of like no wanting to do it, but then I was almost like, I felt like I was told, look, there's not a choice here. That it seemed like there was a choice to start with, but and then as I kept saying, oh, I'll stay with the UFC, I've signed a new 4-fight contract, it started getting to the point where I'm like, it's kind of not a choice. Like, you're gonna go as a free agent, or they're gonna cut you and tell everybody why. And then you wouldn't be able to sign with anybody else either. So I was like, right, it's better to go as a free agent then, because they'll go cut me anyway. I'll try and sign with another company. So that was the plan. Obviously bad timing. COVID was here. Fucking the world was falling to bits. Everything was getting shut down. And yeah, that's why it took so long to. And then after a bit of time, my knee was bad at that time, so my knee was all swollen still. I was still obviously had the injury, and yeah, I was like, I remember briefly I pulled over at the side of the road, and I was like, fuck it, I'm announcing to everybody that I'm retired for MMA, and I was almost just hurt. You know, I was hurt that I'd worked my arse off for the past 10 years plus to then win the biggest fight in my life or career, to then for that to happen. So I was a bit pissed off with the sport, if you like. I was just like, you know what? Fuck
and
MMA.
understandably, that's
totally.
you have an emotional reaction to that. You work so hard, you get one of the biggest wins of your career, 4-fight deal. The knee goes, COVID happens. That's completely understandable that you have that reaction. But as we alluded to earlier, it seems to have worked out pretty well for you now, because you decided to end up going to the PFL. And from the outside looking in, it's, to me, it's like a Rocky story. It's like, you've got a situation where, you sort of retired, you had the knee troubles, you didn't fight for the best part of 2.5 years or 3 years or whatever it was. And then you come back, your first fight, you unfortunately lost that fight. And then you fight in Anthony Pettis in your second fight, who, probably the biggest name that you'd fought to date. Ever. Yeah. I mean, the guy that was on the Wheaties box, the guy that was a former UFC lightweight champion. This was a huge moment, and everyone, I think, was going, oh, well, Pettis is going to win this fight, isn't he? And then you come along and do that unbelievable, was it a modified twister submission that everyone goes fucking nuts for? And not only do you beat him in the second round, because with the point system in the PFL, you get through to the semifinals, you then have to fight Anthony Pettis again 6 weeks later. And again, people are either going, oh, Pettis will get his revenge. That was like a lucky sub or whatever it was. It's such a unique thing. And then you beat him again in a completely different way. And now you're one fight away, one win away from $1 million. It's a Rocky story. It's a great thing. Are you aware of how much of a great story it is for the fans to watch this happen to you? Hello.
The families just came home, so chaos. I'll be 5 minutes. Yeah, so I mean, sometimes it still feels a bit surreal, and because of where I was at before even signing with the PFL, like, I was doubting, like, because even though I retired in an emotional kind of way, it then started getting to the point where I'm like, I don't know if I will ever fight again. It's been that long. And because after I retired, I remember a couple of weeks gone by, and me then figured, like, fuck, like, what am I gonna do now? I've just retired for MMA. The thing I've done for the last 10 years, I'm fucking no good at anything else. I'm not wanting to go back to the building site and being a labourer. And yeah, I was almost a bit lost. I'm like, what the fuck will I do with my life? I had coaching, but it's not quite the same. And in terms of thrill and then money and stuff as well. So I then like you said, I had my comeback fight, and I made some mistakes. I feel like the ring rust played a big part in that. Props to Martinez for getting the win, obviously, but yeah, I made a lot of mistakes and kind of gave the fight away. To then get Pettis, like I knew I was good enough to get the win, and I hit him with that twister that not a lot of people had seen. It went a wee bit viral. It's a bit surreal sometimes, because I was quite a fan of, Pettis as well. Like
Yeah.
I've watched him in the UFC. He's been the champion. I remember even walking to the arena. Like this is the second time as well. That's how much that's how famous he is. Walking to Madison Square Garden, literally when we were getting picked up, walking to the arena to go and fight. I remember looking at him, still thinking like, that's Anthony Pettis. Fucking hell! Like, he was wearing his vest that we got for the New York Lakers, the New York Yankees basketball top. He had the shades on, and yeah, he just looked he looked pretty cool, to be fair, rich kid. Yeah, I remember looking at him the second time, like just thinking, like fucking, like a bit stunned that it's still like walking to that, and then the other part of my brain's like, shut the fuck up, you're about to go and fight him. Get that mindset. But it literally worked. Yeah, it's like worked out the best for me. The first fight, yeah, it would have been good to win that as well, but it's almost like even a wee bit even cooler the fact that I needed to win. I needed the stoppage. I got the stoppage. It was went a wee bit viral. Then, like you said, immediate rematch. Everybody thinks maybe it was a bit of luck. And then I proved everybody again that, I beat him by decision. And now I'm, like you said, my next fight is for $1 million.
I mean, it's a phenomenal story, mate. And look, your family's just come back. We don't want to keep you. I've really loved chatting to you, but I have to ask you before you go, if it's all right. You've got Olivier Obon Mercier in the final. I don't know when and where that's happening. I'm assuming I don't know if you can say when and where that's happening, but OAM is a former UFC fighter as well. How do you feel you match up to Olivier Obon Mercier, and how's that fight going to go in your opinion?
So yeah, I'm sure the fight is November 25th. I'm pretty sure that's it's out there. Like you could probably find it. That's where it is.
Yeah.
Where it is, I'm still not sure where it is. It was meant to be Vegas, but they've changed it. And we're waiting to hear back where it is. So hopefully we hear soon, because me, like an idiot, went and booked I booked the wife flights to Vegas for that date, and now they've changed it, and it was non-refundable flights. So yeah, I've had to try and request a refund, but because I looked at changing it and stuff, and I do think it just seemed too much hassle, and the destination where I think it's maybe going to be wasn't giving me the option to change it to that place. So I mean, it's somewhere in America, but still waiting to hear exactly where it will be. It's 11 weeks tomorrow, so 11 weeks away. Yeah, I feel like we're quite similar. Like, I think he had 11 or 12 fights in the UFC. Maybe 11. One was the Ultimate Fighter, so 11 or 12. I've not exactly counted, but and yeah, I'm the same. I had 11 fights in the UFC as well. We're both southpaws. We both have big left hands. We're both pretty decent sized for the weight. Both strong. Both decent wrestlers. Yeah, I feel like we're actually pretty similar. And I don't know. I've obviously been biased, but I just think nobody wants it as much as me or needs it as much as me. He's He's not got 4 kids to feed. So I'm going to train my arse off for the next 11 weeks. And you know what? If I lose, then he's definitely the better man, because I'm going to train like there's no tomorrow. I'm going to put everything into this. For the past 12 years of my life, the ups, the downs, the everything, it's all for this one night. So you better believe that everybody's going to see the best Stevie Ray ever. And yeah, I'll be obviously coming to, take his arm, take his head, his leg, anything. I'll be doing whatever I can to get the win.
Nice one. Can't wait to see it, mate.
Absolutely.
Cannot wait. Best of luck on November 25th, did you say?
November 25th.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's November 25th, somewhere in America.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Nice. Well, yeah, can't wait, mate. Look, we'll let you get to your family. We know that they've just walked in and we've taken up loads of your time.
That was the wife just saying she's away to walk the dog, and I think that was her trying to get my attention to say leave the kids, I think so.
Well, say.
No,
I did meet your wife at the PFL London, so say hi from me. Hello, nice to see you again. How you doing?
I'm starstruck.
Well, so was I. You came over and said hi. I was like, can I say hi to Stevie, please?
I know, I said that to Stephen. I was like, you said that I can get a picture, but only if you can get a picture with him.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I thought I was getting ditched with the kids there, but she's taking them where, so all good.
Lovely. Lovely.
Well, as I say, we've taken up loads of your time. I could speak to you all day, Stevie. It's been great, and best of luck in the PFL
Absolutely,
final. One
mate.
fight away
Good
from
luck,
$1 million.
Stevie.
It's going to be great.
I appreciate it for having you on. It was good chatting with you guys.
Absolutely.
You too.
Lovely.
Well, when you win and when you're a millionaire, you'll come back on.
Yeah, definitely, man.
That's it.
Lovely.
Nice one, man.
Thanks,
All the
a lot,
best.
Stevie. Cheers, man.
Lad.